I probably sat right here for probably about, I don't know, like 10 minutes deciding if I even wanted to film this or not. Well, that and kind of like fucking with the lighting in my little attic here to see if I can get it how I liked. But that aside, yeah, I think I spent 10 minutes deciding if I even wanted to film this. And I guess that's because this is pretty important to me. Because they're talking about something I've been living with for my entire life, even though I didn't know it for about half of it. And that's autism. Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. My eye is tearing up. I'm not crying already yet, I swear. But yeah, I don't know. I've just been sitting here again, fucking with the lighting and thinking about if I even wanted to film this because talking about this is really, really weird for me because I don't know very many people who can directly relate to what I deal with, and I don't know how to properly convey it either. So I guess I'm just hoping that filming and uploading this, I can reach out to some people who are, I guess, suffering. Or I shouldn't use suffering. Hold on. I shouldn't use suffering as the word because that's not the correct word. I don't want to make it seem like it's a condition that's purely bad. Like no, there's some good with it, but obviously there's also, well, like with anything, there's the good and there's the bad, and you got to figure out how to find the balance between the two. Yeah, and I think the other reason it took me a little while to decide if I even wanted to record this was, well, this has been like the first video since I think the 4320 deluxe video that has had my face in it. Which, yeah, that's been it. I don't think anyone had really noticed or cared, but that's been intentional. I haven't I haven't had my face in videos in a while. It's because I didn't want my face in videos. I mean, quite obviously. But yeah, like I didn't want my face in videos because I was and still am like very genuinely unhappy with how I look. And that's been like its own like journey to work through. I mean, it's one that I'm still working through at the moment. I mean, clearly there's a lot of stuff to work on. I mean, but that's besides the point. Because back to the matter at hand, we're talking about autism, and I don't like. But I think what I really mainly want to talk about is my own experience with autism and and I guess how the way it affects my daily life and trying to communicate with, neurotypical people. If that's what I guess that's how I'm gonna classify people who don't, I guess openly, don't openly declare that they have, a particular mental health condition. Because I mean, while I'm by no means like secretive about the fact that I have autism. I'm also not the type of person who's gonna go like I'm also not I also don't like start outwardly, blurting it out to people like, "Hey, I have autism." Like no, like I typically don't do that. Like I typically just, if it comes up naturally, I'll tell them just so like, hey, they know that I have this, so I can kind of explain away like any sort of like, you know, like slightly out of the ordinary behaviors I may have that result from that. But but obviously that's like just part of it for me. And I do typically try to get it out of the way as early as possible because I think it's probably most advantageous too. So that way, once that happens, the discussion is over and we don't really need to talk about it again. It's like they know. Well, does that really affect many people's opinion of me? No, and that's good. Like, because obviously, I think most people who do know me know that, oh yeah, this is just a part of who I am, and it's not the entirety of what makes me me. Also, oh, there's like a little ant walking across my desk. Okay, but yeah, like I don't know, like it's a very funny condition, kinda. I don't know if that's the correct. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for, but it's the one that came to mind. Like it's funny in the sense that like the stereotypes about it are both true but also not at all. Like like the stereotype that autistic people are like crazy geniuses who can do really complicated math in their head. like I know for certain I am not that type of person, but also there are obviously plenty of other people who are who are artistic that can do those types of things. I just know I am not one of them. And I mean, kudos to them for being able to do that because I certainly can't do it. But I don't know, like it is a very weird stereotype that I guess that I'm assumed to be smarter than I am purely because of that, and then told that I should be happy that I'm being stereotyped in that way because it's a good stereotype, which I mean, stereotyping as a whole is not good because it already falls into the fallacy of a hasty generalization about a particular group of people. But obviously, I'll talk about logical fallacies as a different conversation, even though those might come up some throughout this. And I don't know, in my own personal experience with autism, like I've always been like, I guess for like a slight bit of context, like I didn't know that I was autistic until I was about 10 years old, and I'm 19 currently. Yeah, like I'm 19 currently, and I didn't know until I was 10 years old. And obviously, at that age, when my parents were trying to explain to me what this was, I didn't really know what to do with it. Like I didn't really know that I was different than anybody else. Like I was just out there, doing my thing, just doing whatever I felt like. At least within the limitations of being 10 years old. And I guess I didn't really operate under the assumption I was any different because why would I think I'm any different? It's like, but especially at 10 years old, I just knew that I was my own person. Everybody else is their own person. And that was that really. And so, I don't know. I think it's one of those things. I think before I found myself being much less judgmental and trying not to dive into the intricacies of what was going on with a person, which of course is partially just from being in that age range, because obviously 10-year-olds aren't really actively thinking about other people, at least, and if they are, they're not really thinking about it on a very deeper, nuanced level in the same way like say someone my age or older would. So obviously those two things probably somewhat compounded. So that probably somewhat compounded into me just not really thinking I was different. So, and so then when I found out, it kind of didn't really it didn't really do much at first because obviously when I found out it was the summer in between fifth grade and sixth grade, and going into sixth grade knowing this again I didn't really think too much of it because obviously I'm 10 11 years old, and I'm not really and I'm not well. It's one of the like above anything that's I'm just not able to really understand what this is. And I mean, just and probably to some degree, I still don't now. But especially at that age when I already was when my brain was already much less developed and much less able to comprehend much more complex concepts like that. Like a mental health disorder, and so not really being able to understand what it was, and that just led to me not thinking really anything of it in the slightest. And not thinking anything of it in the slightest, I just kept going on about my life, doing my own thing, just doing again whatever I could with the limitations of being in sixth grade and 11 years old. But it was, which I mean, the only thing that really happened is that I did start getting placed into special education classes through because obviously once I was officially diagnosed, once I was officially diagnosed, I did get put on an IEP, which I know that there's a different acronym for that depending on where you live, but for me it's an I for where I live in the southeastern United States, it's IEP, and that stands for Individualized Education Program. And obviously it's one of those things that can be used if say if your child has something that could be classified as a learning disability, which in certain cases autism can be classified as a learning disability. Which granted I know this isn't the terminology used anymore, but I guess it's probably the best way I can articulate this. It's more considered a learning disability if you're on the more low functioning side of the spectrum, whether it's say compared to someone like me who's considered very very high functioning, like high functioning to the point where until I told most people they didn't know that I was autistic, which I mean, that's cool, I guess, but back to the point, like once I got put on this IEP, I remember in sixth grade I got one special class through it, and it was like a learning strategy class where even though granted it didn't really discuss much learning in the slightest, it was really more of a class that was about socialization, which which I liked. Like I remember I have very 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 fond memories of that class, and like I feel like it did do a lot of good for me in terms of developing my social skills because I think especially at this point they certainly weren't lacking compared to a lot of the other kids, but like, compared to other kids who weren't on these IEPs for like social and learning disorders, it was certainly I think my social skills were still certainly behind, even if not by a very significant margin. But yeah, like I remember like class was mostly just about just us, me and the other kids. We were just socializing. We were like playing up. We had like a bunch of little beanbag chairs that we messed around with. We played games on like little Chromebooks they gave us. Like it was generally a good time. Like generally a very 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 good time. And again, it was a situation where again I wasn't really thinking too much behind the implications of the class because well, why would I? Again, I was just 11 years old and I was like, oh, this is a class where I can do whatever I want. I can do some homework if I feel like it. I can do I can socialize with my friends. I can play games. Like obviously, why would an 11-year-old think about the implications of what's going on? Like obviously I didn't. And obviously going throughout that class, like, I had a fairly good time, developed pretty decent socially. And I was thinking, okay, if I'm gonna keep having learning strategy classes and they're gonna keep being like this, oh, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna have a great time here. And then seventh grade happened, which is kind of like, the universal like downward spiral most people go through when they're in public school. I'm at least I know it's like at least what I know it's the most common place for things to go downhill. And I certainly fell into that group because at 12 years old I was at 12 years old my brain was developed more and I was starting to develop more nuanced thought and was able I guess to look at situations with not like not a ton much more depth but more than I was able to previously, and I was able to I guess comprehend the implications of the class I was able to comprehend the implications of being in a class for kids with learning disabilities or social disabilities, even if I couldn't comprehend like the disability in itself. And I remember going into it for seventh grade, realizing the implications of it, and it kind of sent me into a little bit of a downward depressive spiral. Because sitting in that class made me think that I was broken in some way, and that I had to be taken up, and time had to be taken away from where I could have had just a regular class for a class that was there for me to that I number one didn't feel like it was helping with my ability, and then two didn't really think that two I didn't like, and three was kind of casting this doubt on me that I was a broken person in some way that needed to have time taken away from them to develop things that other kids already had developed. And it, and it was, from being quite honest, like that class was probably traumatizing to a degree. Like, like I saw so many things go down in that class that especially at 12 years old, I number one was not emotionally prepared to witness, and also I was not really prepared to think about again whatever the possible implications, build up, you know, like prognoses of these things could be. And well, like I remember, like I saw there was a kid in there. I'm not gonna say his actual name. I think I'll call him, I don't know, David. But yeah, this kid David was in there because he had a lot of anger issues. And I remember at one point he got like so absolutely livid at our teacher that he tried to stab him with a pencil. And it's like it's like that's a really really bad thing to witness when you're like, especially because when that class is a group of, like, 12, 13-year olds who are not really there to implicate, there to understand and implications of the fact that, obviously a student shouldn't be stabbing a teacher for any reason. Because obviously most 12-year-olds are just not really thinking about that. And I mean, I certainly wasn't. It didn't help that I didn't really like the guy at the time, so I was kind of like weirdly into it too, and that was really, really, I don't know, it's really disturbing to look back on now. And because I'm looking at that, I'm just thinking, this poor teacher, like, who's there, like, being like a genuinely really amazing guy trying to help out like a bunch of students that have mental issues. And when what does he get? He gets, you know, assaulted with a pencil and threatened to have a desk thrown at him. Like, all because he was trying to help out, and that's really really rough. And I also and I do feel really really bad in hindsight, because again I was absolutely brutal to this guy who did not deserve it. Because like that teacher I had, like, man, that guy was like, he's like one of the most like tolerating people I've ever met. Like, I can't believe how much he was able to put up with. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I wish there was a way I could contact him now so I could, I guess, update him on where I am a few years later. And I guess how I feel about it in hindsight. But yeah, like, obviously, like, there was all the things that were happening in that class, and plus a lot of the ways it made me feel. And so I was getting, and I was partially trying to, and I partially used that as motivation to really get my schooling up, so that way I could prove that I didn't need, so I could prove I didn't really need the help from it. Because like the two main reasons I had that IEP in the first place were, one, because obviously the massive social issues I had, the massive social issues I had, but on top of that, sorry, I had this very very weird cycle when it came to schoolwork, where it's like I would, like, for like half the quarter I would completely fuck off on my work, and and then my mom would get a call from the teachers, like, saying I'm failing everything, and then within like 2 weeks I would bring everything up just enough that I would be able to pass the quarter. and and again, this, and make I think because my mother was noticing like these fluctuations in my schooling ability so much, is because that she wanted to get me tested for autism, but every time the school was about to start their testing period, uh, I would always like bring my grades back up, and so they wouldn't feel the need to test me anymore. And well, and it kept going like that until fifth grade, when I switched schools to one that was closer to near my dad's house. Uh, and that and within like 2 weeks of being at that school, the teachers were coming to my mom to say that they were suspicious I might be autistic, and well, I mean, they were right. So I'll see. Yeah, sorry about the little jingling. I'm like stimming with this like 5K finisher bell I got, like metal. Why did I say bell? It's a metal. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry about this. This is like so discombobulated. It's like I don't know. I'm just partially like thinking of a lot of thoughts are just kind of coming to my head like as I'm talking. And it doesn't help that it's really really late right now. I don't know. Like, yeah, it's like two and yeah, it's, I don't know what you can see that, but yeah, it's like 2 in the morning right now. Also, don't ask about the Funtime Foxy background. That's a different story. But yeah, but yeah, moving from like seventh grade to eighth grade, like I kept trying to use getting out of that class and proving I didn't need the IEP as an excuse to really keep my grades up, because well, because I was very much in the situation where it's like, I don't like this. I want to show them that I don't need this, and it ended up being really, like, it ended up both doing me good and doing me bad, because I because I hated the environment of that, like, learning strategies class so much. And I always felt like when I was walking around that people were like secretly behind my back, making fun of me for being the kid that had to be in the special needs class. Uh, it eventually and the fact that obviously that class was also making me feel like I was broken in some way. I was broken in some way. Uh, it drove me to probably the darkest place I've ever been. Because at 13 years old, I was suicidal. And, and it didn't show for a few weeks. It didn't show for a few weeks. And I remember one time I was in my learning strategies class. And I remember one time I kind of cracked a joke about it to my teacher. And then I just broke down. I just started sobbing uncontrollably, like I couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't hold it in anymore. And yeah, like it was probably the darkest place I've ever been. And it was all like I said, it was all because of this weird, very much unintentional, internalized ableism I felt. I don't know if ableism's the correct. I don't think ableism's the correct word, but I think you get the point. I felt like I had been growing to hate the condition that a few years ago I couldn't. That even to this point I still didn't understand what it was. Even to this point I didn't understand what it was, but I still ended up hating it because of all the ways I felt like it was affecting me, or the way it was causing other people around me to act, and the way those people acting was affecting me. And I mean, thankfully through that IEP, I had a counselor, and so I was like talking with her a lot. I was able to really pull myself out of it, and I was able to pull myself out of it and start. Of course, the part of the issue is that obviously, at 12 and 13 years old, I didn't really realize I didn't really realize what I was feeling, so I guess I didn't really spend enough time with her to realize what I was feeling to properly deconstruct it. Obviously, especially not in the way I can now. Obviously, 6 almost 7 years past that point. With where my brain is much more developed and I can more critically analyze the emotions I felt in the past and realize that there were likely much deeper things motivating some of those actions. But yeah, it was a really, really rough period for like a couple weeks, but after that point, I was able to pull myself out of it. And I started feeling, still not great, but I still felt better. But then I still, oh, I still felt better going forward about things, and then I felt like I didn't. I think it's one of the things I still didn't feel like I had as much resentment for the condition as I had previously, but I think part of that was still there, and it still sits with me today. It still sits with me today, and it still does cause me some issues, but it's still in a much more resolved state than it was then. And I'm so fucking thankful for the people that I had with me that sat through that. Imagine those counselors who were imagine those counselors there were. I don't know what I'm thinking. I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, it was. I don't know. It was a rough period, but obviously I think as the resentment was kind of wearing off, and I started getting back into a healthier space mentally, I felt like I could branch out more. I felt like I could more easily talk to people, and I guess it did help that even in eighth grade, I still had friends that I'd made from previous years. With granted, a majority of those friends still being from the special needs class, but hey, friends are friends, right? And hey, if it doesn't really matter where they come from as long as they treat you well and they have your back. And that's what I would say. Those were the main people I hung out with for a majority of that time. And honestly, like it was pretty, it was getting pretty good. It was getting, it was like it was getting better. But obviously, once high school begins, then the academic pressure sets on, and that can compound a whole bunch of other issues. For the, which I mean, granted, for the most part, I was able to handle decently. Like I was certainly nothing exceptional, but I got by with decent grades, decent GPA. Like, yeah, I mean, I was just like overall doing. I was doing well for myself, though I definitely was not doing as good as I could have been. Because it's like, I mean, while I was talking about how I don't fall into like the exceptionally gifted category, like, I mean, some of my results have shown to me to be gifted in some way, and I really hate talking about it and describing myself as gifted because I'm always worried it'll come off as really, really, really egotistical and like I'm like stroking my own dick. And like I promise I'm gonna take this somewhere different, but like I just want to preface that like right off the bat because like I don't want to make it sound like I'm like trying to be like super like humble braggy or anything like that because well like because I know how that can come across and I don't and it's like I don't want and it's like I don't want people to think I'm like actually that full of myself. So I guess to make this point as brief as possible, while while in school I certainly didn't fall into like the category of the exceptionally gifted kids. Like I certainly was I was certainly like above average in like many respects. It's like I was getting through majority of my classes with barely any effort and I was like getting like, mid to low B's. Like, an A if the class was particularly easy. And I was generally feeling like I was feeling like like not great about myself academically, but I felt like pretty decent. Like I felt like I was doing what I needed to do, even if I could have been doing it better. And that's pretty much how I was feeling, for ninth, 10th, and 11th grades, from like that 14 to 16 year range. Like I was feeling pretty decent. But it ended up like all changing when I hit 12th grade. Because 12th grade was the year I first took AP classes. And they were a jump that I both was completely prepared for and was not prepared for at all. And well, I guess to help illustrate that point, like the two AP classes I took were AP Physics and it was AP Literature and Composition. And like the dichotomy between those classes is kind of insane to me because AP Literature I loved. Like I had a great time in that class. And AP Physics was absolute hell for me. And to get to the point I was talking about earlier, like AP Physics was kind of the class that really started that. That kind of slapped me in the face with I'm not as good as I thought I was. Because obviously, especially if you've taken AP classes, you already know they are fast. Like AP classes are very very fast, and they expect you to be able to retain them. They expect you to be able to retain, understand and think about information on a higher level than you would in an honors class. Like obviously obviously that's the point of an AP class because it's supposed to be the rank above an honors class. And well, I mean yeah, I mean it's one of those. I guess one of the. It was very much a situation of. I can't talk. Sorry. I'm like losing my point. I just had it in my head, but I'm losing it. Like I guess I'll just start with A. I guess I'll start with more detail about AP Lit. Like, like I said, AP Lit, that was a class I had a very good time in, and a class that I was generally I was like very much enjoying and looked forward to at the end of my day. Like it was something that it was always it was basically always the class that was able to like give me that little boost because I was able to almost always walk into that class and know, I'm gonna have a good time. Because like, my classmates are all pretty cool. My teacher was very cool. Like, I mean, I know you're not watching this, but if you are, hello, Miss Steiger. Your class was great. and I think what made it even better is that that class came the period after physics, because physics was the class that took any academic confidence I had and then threw it into a crater at twice the acceleration of gravity. uh, yeah, like it was a class that almost like destroyed, like it very much destroyed me academically because it was a class where everyone but me in there seemed to get it, and it didn't seem to matter how much extra help I got. I just I just didn't get it. And I didn't get it then, still don't get it now, but also I haven't put too much serious effort into it since 2021. So that's definitely not helping my case here. Yeah, like I don't know, like stop stumbling over your words. Stop stumbling over your words. Stop stumbling over your words. Like yeah, my God, why am I losing this point that I'm trying to make? Like yeah, physics was the class that made me realize I was not. I wouldn't say not as smart as I thought I was, but it was the first class that I really had in high school that like had challenged me to a level I had never been challenged before. And obviously that was a very, very sobering experience for better or for worse because like it took what I already thought I could do, and then like every time we were getting into a new unit, like it was taking it a rung higher and like pushing me to new things that I didn't ever think I would be able to do. And some of it that I still can't do. Which I mean, I both appreciate it and kind of resent it for that. Because on one hand, I got like I think especially now a few years like I know like a year and a half after the fact, like I am happy that it did challenge me to some degree because obviously challenging your current intelligence level is how you get smarter. Because obviously that's how you get smarter, like because you challenge yourself to think about things in a new way, or think about how you can apply what you've learned, and you keep repeating that process to get smarter. And again, and the issue and the good thing was that physics took that and it pushed me, and it really pushed me to do that. Issue being, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it at all, and again and I guess it ties back in is because it gets back to that stereotype of like the super smart autistic person. Like this was like the first like really sobering reality that I was nowhere near that. And even then, like I already didn't think I was particularly close to that to begin with. Like I don't I'm already someone who's already very doubtful of my own intelligence. And I already constantly self-deprecate about it. And and it felt like this class was like reaffirming all of that self-deprecation. And it was like making me think, oh wait, this probably wasn't self-deprecation. What I was saying was actually true. And it was very much a thing that was like it was like to a degree like it was like intellectually both eye-opening and traumatizing. And And like I think it's the most I have to say on it at the moment. But yeah, like it was absolutely brutal on me, and I think it's one of the I think it's a thing for me to like fully get past it. I think it's one of those things I'm gonna have to find a way to make peace with it. Either that through trying to take like a similar type of physics course now, where I'm going to I'm taking a similar level of physics course now to see how well I can comprehend it. With a couple years more brain development and a little bit more mathematical, there's a little bit more mathematical practice. But I don't know. But I don't know. Like that's the thing is I don't know. And like I think I think it's part of where a lot of this leaves me is I don't know. Because I mean like the whole point of filming this is I was gonna try to see if I could I don't know just work through some of my thoughts and see if I could sort of like pinpoint see how closely I can pinpoint the reason I have like some like still there resentment for my own autism because it's like I don't have an issue with autism as a whole. It's only specifically for me. And the fact that I've always had like this sort of residual hatred for it ever since like basically ever since I started realizing how it was affecting me day to day. And I was hoping to deconstruct more of that, but I guess I didn't get there. I don't know. Hopefully, this serves as like some level of a baseline where I can come back to it and like listen to any point I was trying to get across here, and hope that some of it makes sense because I have no clue how this is gonna come off. And because I do know I didn't talk too much about how much it affects my daily life, like I said I was going to, but I might go ahead and save that for another like rant about this because otherwise I can't think about because I'm too focused on like everything else that I'm talking about in this general space too. I guess try and divert the video to that side of the condition. So yeah, I'll probably save that for another rant on this, but I was hoping to try and pinpoint to some degree where like this residual hatred of it is. And honestly I've still got nothing. Because I don't know, maybe it's the limitations of my own ability to self-assess. I don't know, maybe it's just because I don't want to realize something. I don't know yet. But I think I'll probably have to speak with someone on that to see if I can make any sort of a breakthrough. But I guess until then, that's gonna end this. Yep, sorry if this was just a big ramble that didn't make sense.